Hi everybody, it's Bina 007 here. This is actually a repost of the same episode that we put out yesterday, but hopefully with slightly louder audio. As is the nature of a panel, the audience members who were asking questions were not mic'd up. So if you see a sudden jump in the topic of conversation, that's the reason. It's because I've cut out a bit of dead silence where the question was. Hopefully you're still getting insight from the panel's answers. And so please enjoy.
We're here to discuss, obviously, Yara Greyjoy, otherwise known as Asha Greyjoy in the books. We'll get into that, I think. Let's introduce ourselves and we'll get started.
Sure.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's been a great con, so I'm running on fumes. My name is Amber, or you can call me Yara, because that's who I was the past 2 days. That's my online persona. She's my baby. I love her to death, pretty much.
I'm Simone. I'm just a fan. Am I coming through? Okay. I cannot hear it at all up here. Also running on maybe a little more than fumes, but it has been a good con. So, yeah, I got a couple of dollars of gas.
I'm Michal, and I'm a writer at hypeable.com, and I podcast with the Vassals of Kingsgrave, and I didn't like Asha for a while, and then I realized that she was amazing, and now I like her.
My name's Casey. I podcast with Vassals of Kingsgrave, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
So I guess first, we should maybe talk about what makes Yara in the show a standout character, because she doesn't have that much screen time, right? She's relatively minor,
Unfortunately.
but she has a pretty big impact.
Yeah, I mean, she clearly knows what she's doing, and she's also been really primed by Balon, and she comes from a society that really is very clearly misogynistic. I would argue that most places in Westeros are pretty misogynistic, but the Ironborn are particularly very much so. And, to see her come to power in that kind of a society is so fascinating. And, of course, in the books and I guess in the show, too, with Euron, I like to forget about Euron.
Don't we all?
Show Euron doesn't exist. But to see her, ultimately in the show become Lord of the Iron Islands is great.
Yeah.
Although I wish for more for her.
Yeah, it's interesting that she kind of balances in that society that is both. In the books, it's pretty clear that to a certain extent, the Iron Islands are sort of a meritocracy and are sort of democratic in a very primitive way, but that just doesn't translate to women. And she, grew up thinking well, why shouldn't that translate to me? And I think that informs a lot of her character, and as somebody who feels like she is a rightful heir to all of the rights that she should have in the society, doesn't.
And also, it is so great for me, seeing somebody who is a strong warrior as she is, and having so many of these masculine characteristics, but also still keeping her, femininity, I guess, with when she's tricking Theon a bit, which is a weird way to use your femininity. But, but she clearly is sexually open, and I find that awesome about the character as well, and I identified with as well.
That's one of the changes that interest me from show to book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's very much a straight girl.
Yeah. She's still very open sexually.
She's open sexually. Yeah. She's the aggressor. She knows her power. And I thought it was an interesting choice on the show that they made her more into women than versus books. But she is still very feminine. She sought out the other woman that she was with when she was being held captive in the books. Wanted nothing to do with her, but she still wanted that female connection, and I found that softer side of her very intriguing. And she did love her brother.
Yeah, because you see that in the show too. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
So she had a mothering nature to her.
I mean, yeah, she'll, tell him, kill yourself if you don't like it, or, headbutt him, but she still loves him. You know how siblings are.
Yeah, I know the scene where she like comes to rescue Theon, and then just like they basically kind of just hit rewind on the scene. It's like, oh, okay, we're back to where we started. Is not a popular scene, but I do like her in that, her reaction to seeing Theon and the horror that's there when she sees what has become of her brother who she left at Winterfell. And it's, that also ties into some of the, like the warrior culture, right? Because in Westeros in general, I think, but particularly in the Iron Islands, like it would be way better for her to see Theon dead. Like she would, like it wouldn't be as difficult for her to see him dead as it was to see him in the way that was. And I think it's an interesting kind of process for her in the show to like accept Theon for the new person that he is, which kind of parallels his self-acceptance journey.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I felt like the show kind of used Yara as like something for Theon to visualize Theon's growth in, which I don't appreciate as much. I really wish that we were able to like see her come back to the Iron Islands in season 8 and just like see that like whatever is supposed to happen there. I'm sure there weren't enough actors left on the island to help her out. I really wish that I could have seen more of her in season 8 and see her, I assume that because she is ending as the Lord of the Iron Islands, that she will end up as such in the books or something along those lines. But under that assumption, I am really looking forward to seeing like that play out, especially since we have her point of view and can see that come into fruition.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also so interesting to see kind of, I mean, I went into the season like, and we recorded our predictions podcast, and I was like, Yara's going to die in episode 1. They don't like her. She's going to die in Theon's arms after having been tortured to insanity by Euron, like as a parallel. And I was like hardcore convinced that was going to happen. So like the fact that she's alive now, I'm kind of just like, cool, like whatever.
This is great.
Hey, she's alive and she's not insane. Like they didn't pull that on her, which is great. But it is there's something that stands out to me about the contrast between her in the show and in the book, which I really do like. I like her in the show, and I actually think I can't believe I'm blanking on her name, the actress. Gemma Whelan is really great as her, and I actually remember
she's so good.
She got a lot of flack like when she was cast because people were like, she's not hot enough. I was like, okay, whatever.
Okay, as a cisgendered heterosexual woman, I saw her in those leather pants and was like, damn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's got BDE coming out of here.
Well, it's like that scene when she's with Daenerys and Marine, and they meet, and I'm like, they show that shot of her from behind, from below, and I'm like, okay. I get it. Because Danny was like, oh, okay. It's like, yes, please, God, get together.
Oh, God, I ship that so...
Yes,
Okay,
me. Yes,
side
we do.
tangent.
Oh my God.
Emilia Clarke has much better chemistry with women than she does with men.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say.
Oh my God,
On
yes.
screen. I'm not commenting on her personal life, but... I do love her. And it's also funny just about Gemma Whelan, because if you watch her in Gentleman Jack, which is
God,
also on HBO,
love that show.
she's so different. She's like almost a Sansa-esque figure, like very
She's
prissy and like
hysterical in that show.
yeah, she's great. So
I need to watch that.
yeah,
I will
huge
have
props.
a son, and he will have a better claim to Shipton than you. Oh my God, yeah, watch it. It's so great.
Yes, exactly. She's a great actress. But also there's a picture of her breastfeeding on the set, which is also just like, you know
she's
what,
very
lady,
open
you
about
just
that.
get it. You just
She's
yeah,
very
like,
open about that.
BD.
yeah. Or maybe in that case, BBE.
Yeah, she's like got her from where she's with been on Euron's boat, and she's like, you can see where she's bruised from the cuffs, and she's got dirt on her face and dirt on her hands, and she's like in her undershirt, and she's like got her kid, like, sup?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God.
But she does it out in public, and everybody's loving her for it, and it's been shared all over. So she's really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool actress. I'd love to meet her. I need to meet her.
But something that I actually want to get your thoughts on in terms of the difference between the show and the book is that, like, I think in the book what stood out to me, and one of the reasons I didn't like Asha initially is because I kind of wrote her off as one of the, like, you know, like women written by men who can't have emotions because they're strong female characters, capital F, capital C. And George very much subverts that. She does have like a nurturing side. She's very like her friendship that develops with is really, really strong and touching.
Friendship that she forced on her.
Yeah.
You're gonna be my friend. You're gonna talk to me.
But even before that, like you know, she's taking care of the Glover kids. Like Yara Asha in the books approaches war and approaches violence in a very equitable way. Like she has no interest in visiting any kind of violence on somebody who can't fight back. Like and that's very rare in her society, especially with the Ironborn, with their thralls and all their wonderfulness. So, and I kind of felt that was missing in the show somewhat. That she was more.
I would agree. So when Daenerys tells them no reaping, no raping, her response is, "But that's our way of life." Whereas, book Asha, her whole goal in wanting to be the leader of Ironborn was to put an end to all the unnecessary violence that has brought nothing but heartache to their community. She just wanted to create a home for them and a stability for them without being at war and at odds with everybody all the time. Like, we don't need the mainland. And as far as conquering, because what does it get us? Pine cones and rocks.
Yeah, oh, that's such a great speech. Oh.
So, yeah, that was an interesting choice, that they were keeping her more with traditional Ironborn versus what her book self really wanted, was just stability and less violence for their people. And Carl the maid.
Yeah.
Because Carl's kind of feminine, too, so I'm like, I wonder if maybe they used that to switch over to the show a bit, because he's called the maid. That was just the thought
in
I
the
had
show,
earlier.
maybe they just skimmed it and thought he actually is a woman. Yeah,
you never know. They could have.
I think that it's really interesting that she was allowed that power. And I don't want to use the word allowed, but encouraged by someone like Balon Greyjoy, who is the worst as far as being a father goes.
Yeah, really.
I honestly think, though, that it's more related to a, like, strong, like, these are my genes being passed on, and I need somebody, like, that's in my family to pass on this legacy, and his only option is Asha/Yara. And I think that his reason for doing that might be more self-centered.
Yeah. He's not like some like radical egalitarian or anything. He's just like
Theon's half Stark essentially, so he's like, no, not you.
And I mean, doesn't she even say, or he says that, like, you're my son, you just don't have a penis. Like, it's
basically. I mean, it's not unself-serving for him, but it does
It's like when you rule the Iron Islands, you can have peace.
I mean, in this context, it is kind of allowed. Yeah.
But it puts her, like, positioned. And it wouldn't mean anything from him, even if nobody else was willing to get on board and follow her. And I honestly believe she would have won the King's Moot had Euron not shown up with this crazy display of magic and cuckoo-ness. Because she was a good talker, and she backed up her talk, and then she did the smart thing and got out of there. Whereas a lot of people would have just, like, hung around to see how things fell out. Like, well, I lost, so she was like, no, screw that.
Yeah.
I'm oh, you married me to somebody? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was,
And she's even doing the politicking behind the scenes because she's trying to make, when she realizes that her argument is not enough to sway the men who are voting, she tries to make a deal with Victarion, right? Yes. About, like, he'll, and then
But he's a blockhead, so.
Yeah, and then he's like,
really
is he asking, she wants to marry me, and then that.
I'm sad.
Poor me, I killed my wife. It's all Euron's fault.
Yeah, pretty much.
So sad. So, not the Victarion panel, but.
Definitely not.
The Ironborn are problematic.
Is it problematic in Westeros?
That's true.
Very
That's true. Yeah. But it's interesting that we don't get Yara or Asha's point of view until dance, right? Until
Correct.
yeah. And until then, we're relying on like objectively misogynist people to like Theon when he's Theon and talking to her like he's
when they first meet.
not enlightened to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have Aaron, and then we have Victarion, and they're all dunderheads, and very like
Pretty much.
yeah. So it's very interesting that George kind of picked that route to explore her, because we like Aaron watching her speech at the King's Moot is like not on board. He like doesn't even really think she should be allowed to get up and make her claim, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And
No place for women.
yeah. No woman may sit the sea stone chair or whatever, along with godless men and whatever. But yeah, it's an interesting mechanism for George to present this character. And I don't think the show did a terrible job with her. Like, there's nothing that Yara does in the show that I remember being like contrary to Asha's character. But I don't think that nuance is there.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I know that there was a lot of flack for that brothel scene
Yeah.
between her and Theon, and I got it.
I mean,
You love this person, you want them to be whole, you've seen them make steps and then fall back, and it's the point of frustration. I just want you to be you. And you just kind of lash out.
she probably
snap
never
out
really
of
grew
it.
up with any kind of comforting, too. Or like, oh, sweetie, you're all right. We'll help you out. It's like, damn it, come on, be you.
Yeah.
But then you see later on the boat with Ilaria, when she's picking on him, leave him be.
Yeah. She's like, no.
So it's like your family. I can talk about my family, but don't you dare.
Yeah.
I will hurt you.
That's pretty much what she does. She's like, headbutts him and then is like, all right, come on, let's get up. Let's
Yeah.
go.
And she never gives up on him, which
never.
is, I think, a very touching thing.
I would say books-wise, by Feast and Dance, I'm like, who are these people and why am I reading about them? I don't care. But I would say for anybody who struggles with those books, they're a slow burn. You have to digest them, and I will say that the Asha character is what made me appreciate the books. I was like, well, I want to know more about where this is going. Because she's intriguing.
Really, the Dorne
She really is
chapters and
different,
the Ironborn chapters in those two books, like, are really what will make me reread them.
Yes.
And just getting Asha's point of view in that whole thing is great. Yeah.
Because they were never technically conquered by Aegon.
Unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Yes, I am a true Dornish. And I always say the Greyjoys are trash, except for Yara.
Okay. I was getting ready to be like,
She redeems the Iron Islands for me.
I would agree.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's interesting because I don't think the Ironborn are 100% aware of their power in that way. I think actually Asha is one of the more. I don't think she ever thinks about it explicitly, but she definitely has a sense that there is maybe more bargaining. Like they could take over a part of the mainland and just be like, "Hey, we're here. We're not going to go any further, but this is us, and like we're staying here." But like I don't get the sense that the men are like Balon's just usually like, I'm gonna take it all, whatever, or be independent or whatever. As opposed, and the rest of them are just kind of like very myopic and focused on the cycle of reaving and like
This
subsistence.
is our life. This is all we've ever known. This is
Yeah.
all we're ever going to be. She has aspirations, not just for herself,
Yeah,
And even
but
when
her
we
people.
yeah,
Yeah. I love like seeing her like through Theon in like the first chapter and even through the show, like, it's totally obvious how much he has underestimated like how like much of an Ironborn lady she is or warrior she is, because she can clearly master ships and stuff. And Theon's like, where do I park my horse? And I don't know, I can't use horses here.
that's funny. I like that.
And
in a really bad room.
Oh, listen, he's a wolf. He is
Yeah, he's
not a Kraken.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that kind of was.
Yeah. But I, even through that chapter, you can just see how much like she has grown into being like the successor of the Iron Islands at that point. And at that point, we also really don't know about Euron and Victarion, other than maybe they were mentioned in the books. And it's really good to see that it's there.
Yeah.
Why do you think Yara is the only person that we really know of in the Iron Islands who wants or sees a reason to change their lifestyle?
Women's intuition.
Yeah, I was about to say because she's a woman.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's like more than an intuition. It's the fact that she's coming from a perspective that is not given, the normal Ironborn way of life, right? If you're like a strong guy or even like a middle of the road dude. It's like, okay, so you get to go reaving. Your life kind of sucks. You live on a ship. There's no arid land.
There's no
arable
security.
Land. There's no security, but you get yourself a salt wife, and then if you take that salt wife, you earn that salt wife, and she's yours. And then, it's kind of like this like self-interested cycle. Whereas I think Asha just would never have had an into that anyway. So she just kind of finds, and because she's obviously royal, so she has or noble or whatever, she has a higher perspective. So, but I do think she is inherently more interested because of her.
Yeah, it's the balance between being a warrior and being a woman. Understanding, I need to fight, and I need to fight for what's mine. I need to fight for what's my people's, and
that I can fight.
Of my people, and I can fight. But there needs to be stability. There needs to be some structure so that we're not spending all of our time reaping and raving and only getting enough to make it through the day.
Yeah, and
she's got future sight more than just today.
And I also
thinking ahead.
Sorry, I keep on interrupting you. And I also think that she probably has seen Balon's like struggle. Probably not regret, but like him thinking about how he lost the Greyjoy rebellion.
His bitterness.
Most of his sons have been killed. If not, Theon is not there. Is not an Ironborn.
He technically lost all 3 sons, like he says in the show. He's like, I lost 2 brothers. I lost 3 sons.
And she, she's old enough to remember. Like Theon kind of has somewhat hazy memories of his brothers, but Asha remembers her brothers, and she also remembers. She knows intimately the impact on her mother that this experience has had, losing her sons, and kind of being stuck as a woman in this cycle, and nobody cares,
So why do we think they kept mother absent?
Yeah,
There's no even mention of the mother in the show. Versus
Just
we
in
know
the first-
she's very much alive in the
Just
books.
one. They do mention her one time.
Do they?
When she's at Winterfell talking with Theon, telling him not to die so far from the sea, she's like, we both loved our mother. We both endured our father. That's literally the only thing.
And they suggest that she's dead.
Yeah.
And she's not.
No.
She just can't take it.
I mean, to
Pretty
be fair,
much.
she's not a very prominent character in the books. She shows up in one scene, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's also motivation, as she was saying.
Right. It's true. Seeing Yara go to see her mother and really seeing that dedicated, soft, I think is the wrong word, but empathetic side of her, that would have been a really nice thing in the show. Also, there was room in season 2, one might argue, for something like that.
Yeah.
So jumping to the end of season 8, and this was a very big frustration for me at the Grand Council, the Great Council scene, and the fact that Yara never brings up the fact that they're free. They were promised freedom. She's angry at Jon Snow for killing Daenerys because they promised to follow her, but isn't mad that she's no longer granted her independence. So
maybe by not bringing it up, maybe by not saying something, she's like, all right, if I don't say anything, maybe they won't remember that. I don't know.
I mean, I feel
that was annoying.
I kind of feel like that's just another one of those they're not going to remember that Yara's doing anything.
Well, you see, we kind of forgot
about
that.
God, that.
Yeah.
The meme that keeps on giving.
Yeah. I mean, it's so frustrating, and like I can see that kind of a scene playing out in the books, and like that being like a discussion for like days and days. Like, what are we gonna do, and like how are we gonna fix this, and like it.
And do you think that she would really have that much skin in the game at that point? That she would even show up and care?
I do wonder in the books, like, what Euron's going to do and, like, how powerful they will seem at the end. So I think that will play into that role. But I don't know. And I don't know, with all the rebellions that they've had, I don't know if they will let her as a Greyjoy.
The thing is, I'm not convinced that the Ironborn aren't independent now.
Yeah.
Because they weren't officially one of the seven kingdoms.
Everything's kind of chaotic right now.
And they do have that that promise is never reneged upon by the council. So possibly she's kind of chill in the council because she's like, well, we're just, I'm doing this anyway, and it didn't. The writers didn't think to highlight that.
They didn't think.
And Book Asha versus Show Yara, do we think, knowing what happened, that she would care as much about what happened to Daenerys versus she had to go?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, if it just depends on how much they want to piss off Asha or Yara, having just lost their biggest kingdom of the seven kingdoms and having a, it's painted in a fairly rosy light, but like let's face it, the kingdom is, it's like this strong right now. So like, I don't. If she has the military power, like we were saying earlier, then I don't know that. Oh, but they can just build ships.
Yeah, you saw all the trees on the island. All those trees.
Need a fleet.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah, that made me so mad. I was like, good for you, but
yay. Damn it. I personally don't think she would have had so much anger and vitriol for Jon for having saved the Iron Islands, Winterfell, Dorne. I mean, she was going cuckoo bananas and was going to burn everyone.
But actually, did she see that? Yara didn't.
She didn't see it, but there were enough people there that saw it, heard it.
But at the same time, though, I can imagine her being like, and I think a lot of this is just like narrative economy, and they're just not dealing with it. A lot of the time, Yara in the show does what is required by the plot.
Unfortunately,
yeah. But I could see her being like, okay, so yeah, it was real tough, and she took over her enemies, and she won, and then a guy murdered my main female ally, who was about to be queen. From her perspective, I could see that being a thing. I don't know. I personally think her trajectory in the books is going to be vastly different. I think she's one of those characters where the end is not the same. I actually think she's pregnant with Carl the Maid's child at this point, and that's going to play into the heir of the Iron Islands thing later. The way I like to think of it is like, they have this like crazy sex scene, and then she's like, gotta brew that moon tea, and then Stannis shows up, and she's like, gotta go fight Stannis, and then she's captured, and it's like, never brewed that moon tea, did you? So,
oh jeez.
Yes. Question.
Yeah, she took what was hers with fire and blood, and that's what the Ironborn do. They just do it a different way. They take what is theirs.
I think that's my struggle.
Yeah,
She does have that Ironborn nature, but she's also got this softer, gentler side to her that really isn't all about that.
yeah.
So I think that's my struggle in deciding on how she would actually have reacted in that situation.
And I feel like a lot of the stories, especially at the end of the show, kind of show like you're very true to your
Family.
But I think that in the books, at least right now, it seems like, there's Euron and Victarion in play here who really portray the Greyjoy mentality, whereas Yara is a big contrast to that. And also, I guess Euron is a big contrast because he's a little weird. But
I think that's actually a really good point, because I don't think we have that kind of like Ironborn standard. We have it a little bit in seasons 2 and 3 in the show with Balon, but we don't have like the deep culture of the Iron Islands that we get in the books. That Asha does act as a very strong contrast to. You're right. So I think that maybe like she is just doing the Ironborn thing because she's the only one. I don't think Euron even counts, honestly. In the show, I don't see them as being like, here, like Euron's like representative of the Ironborn. I think they're just kind of like, yeah, they're just kind of like, you know, chaotic evil spirit in there who's like, you know, right, chaotic evil pirate sprite man. I'm the man who killed Jaime Lannister.
That was a brick.
Directly into the camera.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, she has a line that, like, the infant Glover, that she's, like, talking to them. She's like, that baby better not die. Like, there'll be hell to pay if that baby dies on your watch. And it's just, like, that is so representative of who she is. Like, she's an Ironborn who values life. And because the Ironborn life is so about the iron price and about, like, material things and kind of, like, who spills more blood. It's she's really a beautiful contrast because also she's not Ironborn. Like she works as an Ironborn. She's just like an enlightened Ironborn.
Yes, I hated that.
But
And
she
then-
just sat there passively.
Yeah.
Sorry,
One
I've done
thing-
that
yeah,
like
in
5
season
years.
You're
eight,
on.
Another thing I didn't like is that, you know, Theon died for the Starks. Okay, I can understand that. But they didn't send his remains to the Iron Islands because for them because it's like Jon told him in season 7, you're a Greyjoy and a Stark. So perhaps you died with one family, be laid to rest with your other family. That was the way I kind of saw it.
Don't die so far from the sea,
Yeah.
Theon. Don't know.
And he did.
Okay, no.
The thing is, to me, that would have been more. I hadn't really thought about that because I do find the funeral scene very moving, and Sansa
It is.
putting
It is.
the wolf pin on him.
I was crying.
Oh, yeah.
But
Definitely.
that was kind of like, man, those scenes before they leave are like the last good scenes. I think that Theon's death and not to make this about Theon's death, but like his death was not as like Alfie Allen sold it, but it was kind of like
he's so good.
It doesn't matter if one more person charges the Night King. Like it's completely irrelevant. And then you later find out that like
fall back.
yeah. And apparently Bran knew. It was just like, oh no, you go do that so that Arya has time. It's like, oh my god, this
Like, he could have just stood there next to Bran and been like, yeah.
But this is not the Theon podcast.
Or the Bran. but I
Don't you think she would have cared more about what happened to her brother?
Yes.
well, yeah, I mean that's the
And
thing.
that would have
like,
been
Yes.
even more motivation for her to speak up when Sansa pipes up that we're free and we're independent.
Well, also, they both
That
loved
probably
him.
happened. Oh, I'm sorry.
unless
Yeah.
in her mind when he is like, I need to go fight with the Starks, she is like, that's in her mind like the goodbye, and anything they get after that is
That's true.
extra.
Because he was like, I'll do what you tell me. You're my queen.
Yeah.
She was like, all right. So she cared enough about him to be like, all right, I understand this.
But again, we have to do a lot of work in this area as fans.
But it also made me mad, too, at the end when Sansa and Arya are both going after her. And I'm like, you essentially had the same brother. Come on. Don't be fighting with each
No,
other.
women have to fight with each other.
Oh, God. It made me so mad.
I'll get you next, but in the back in the red. All the more reason not to have that animosity towards their brother to the point where Arya is threatening to cut off her. I mean, these are just dots that weren't thought about, let alone connected.
Yeah, I mean, well, so much of that doesn't make any sense in terms
Yeah.
of just like why didn't Grey Worm like literally murder Jon right then?
Right,
like
yeah.
I don't know why he's
You
alive.
killed her?
Yeah, like
Bye.
to say nothing about the fact that Drogon is like, you know what, man who killed my mom, that's fine. Chair.
Oh, my God. That was...
but other than that, yeah, I mean, a lot of the fact that we keep talking about this is the fact that it's just not super well written, and there's a lot of mental work that we have to do to make it fit. But I do think it would have been a little bit easy if nobody had been like, hey, Jon Snow, like, we're kind of pissed off that you killed the woman that we decided was going to be queen. Like, I think somebody had to do that. I don't know that it necessarily makes sense to be Yara, but she was the person who was, like, the most enduring connection that they had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I honestly think that they just, like, made that, like, whole gap just to, like, show that Tyrion's beard grew out. And that's how we know the time's passed.
Yeah. It's possible.